Okay, it's recording. Sure, that looks fine. We're here. We're existing. Oh, I just cracked so many parts of my back. That felt really, really good. I'm so present. I'm definitely present and awake and ready. Hello there, my parasocial pals, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining us. My name is ChloeThePayne, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Today, we're just gonna have some chill book discussion. Reading wrap-up energy, the books that I've been reading for the last few months while I've been out recovering from top surgery. We're gonna be reading notes off of the phone just to not have to feel pressure to be like overly prepared. We're hugging the pillow that makes the menstrual cramps feel slightly better. We're not giving into the voice of internalized pressure that tells us that we need to be better, fancier, more prepared, better research, some version of better that is always so elusive. We're just gonna sit and go with it. You may have noticed last month that I did a community post here on the channel about taking a little longer time off than I had originally anticipated for the top surgery recovery. I am incredibly lucky and incredibly grateful that the recovery experience was a smooth one. I'm healthy, I'm well, I'm okay. However, I really underestimated the impact that just the routine change was going to have on my brain, soul, spirit being. The sleep interruption, the fact that you can't sleep in the same way as you're used to sleeping because you have to be on your back a lot and it's too sore for a long period of time to sleep on your side if you're used to sleeping on your side. I snore when I sleep on my back, so I typically don't do that, so that's also been irritating my poor little throat. Smallest violin in the world here, sleeping on my back more, and that's irritating my throat more, and that makes me irritable during the day. Kind of constant fatigue combined with ups and downs of very often positive feelings, gender euphoria vibes, and then the crashes of just feeling so stuck in your skin suit. Getting used to stretching, and my posture has been terrible because I'm all hunched over and you need to start to slowly stretch that back out. I've felt very trapped as a person in a body and just with not being able to move and stretch and exercise the way that I'm used to. And that's getting better and better every day, but I had originally anticipated that I would get back to my YouTube hobby in late March, early April, when I would have only been at 4 or 5 weeks out from the surgery. And as soon as April hit, I was able to look clearly around and be like, no, that's not gonna happen. That's not a good idea. Let's take some more time. The month of April was instead more about easing back into my day job, stretch my capabilities in terms of what I'm able to do for myself around the house more. I've got a little chart on the wall here at my chalkboard wall of slowly being able to raise my arms higher and higher, that kind of thing. This has definitely been 2 months of fighting that internalized capitalism pressure productivity goblin that tells me to always be using my time, that tells me that I'm wasting my time if I'm not getting certain work-related things done or hobby-related things done. This was a humbling educational time for me of your body forcing you to slow down. I definitely got schooled. I definitely got shown by my body time and time again that no, this is not a period of time to try to fill with tasks or to-do lists or accomplishments or work or hobby. This is a period of time when you might try to tackle some of that stuff and your body will immediately let you know when you are too fatigued to continue, when you are pushing it too hard. Very, very useful and helpful for me, just psychologically, something that I wasn't anticipating. Needing to be reminded that I'm not a robot and I can't force myself to do more than I'm capable of doing at any given time. And I shouldn't have to feel that way. It's almost as if we are all worthy and valid people, even separate and apart from our tasks. We are worthy and valuable people separate and apart from the ways in which we are able to commodify our time or associate a quantity of getting shit done to our identities. So I've been trying to remind myself of that, and it's been good to have the lesson forced upon me when I haven't been able to remind myself of it independently. And I'm really excited to now be starting to ease my way back into YouTube creativity. One of the things that I mentioned in the community post was, oh, I'm just gonna take some extra time off so that I can build up a backlog of more videos before I come back. Won't that be great? That's what I'm doing. I'm definitely not being lazy. I'm using this time in a productive way. I'm gonna make a backlog of videos. It's gonna be great. You better believe I did not do that. I surely did not. I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of stuff coming up for the channel that I'm very excited about. I got some equipment, some like lighting stuff and a microphone that I think might improve the audio visual quality here on the channel. I mean, I know you're asking yourself,
how could it possibly improve any further? This is already just chef's kiss, the most technically proficient channel on all of youtube.com.
Surely. Yeah, I have those pieces of equipment. I certainly have not started playing with them yet because I've just been really wiped out, but I'm excited to start to look at, you know, some different ways that lighting and sound might be different on the channel here moving forward.
We're just gonna have to disco with what we got. Disco with what we got.
I'm really excited about some upcoming readathon vlogs, some upcoming reading so-and-so person's favorite books type vlogs. There's maybe gonna be a like redecorating my home office video. The most ambitious thing that I have on the agenda, I'm gonna try and do one of those good old-fashioned standing in front of your wall and posting a bunch of pictures to it to try to explain a complicated plot, because I love those videos so much. And they're, you know, here in this video today, we're going to talk about the books that I read, but I've also been watching some stuff. There's been some new subscribers in the last month or so. Hi, that one of my old previously posted Try Guys videos blew up randomly, and so there are 100+ new people here. Hello, if this is your first time actually seeing my face in a new video. Right now, we're definitely just trying to put one foot in front of the other. I'm grateful to be easing back into YouTube now, but I'm also gonna try to remember to be patient with myself. I'm really grateful for this channel, and I think that this is a cool time to be here.
Breaking news, breaking news. I forgot to record an intro for this section because I was tired, but we're gonna spend a quick moment now talking about some workers who might be going on strike in my community and how we can support them. Yay for capitalism. Good times. Let's go!
Powell's Books. It is an iconic independent bookstore. It's a magical place to visit. I love Powell's so much. I have also had friends who have worked at Powell's over the years, and so I can tell you firsthand from their experience. Powell's is the kind of place that a lot of people want to work just for the love of the game. It's a place that a lot of readers and writers aspire to work at, but the company has had a history of lack of access to living wages or benefits. So for all of those reasons, Powell's employees have been unionized since 1999, and right now the union is negotiating for a better contract. These contracts are typically renewed every 3 to 5 years, but the last time they were due for a renegotiation, it was 2021. Powell's is now proposing a contract that includes a base wage more than $5 below the living wage in Portland, pay increases that will not match inflation, and healthcare plans that are out of budget for most employees. Below, I'm going to include a link to a news story, an article that was published by a local news. It includes some heartbreaking anecdotes from people who work at Powell's. Ridiculous that a historic bookstore like this that is so beloved should be treating their employees like this, putting their employees in this position where they're staying and trying to remain loyal to the bookstore because they're passionate readers, passionate members of the community, but they're barely able to make ends meet. So the good news is there are lots of easy ways that you can support the union. You can sign their petition, which is totally free. You can email them so that they can be collecting a lot of support from the community that they can relay to Powell's to communicate like, hey, look, the community is really with us. That's totally free. You can follow them on social media and share this information on your social media. That's totally free. If you're financially interested as well, you can also do something that you might have already been planning to do: buy some books. That's right, not only is the union not asking readers to boycott Powell's at all, the union has also set up their own partner link. Order books through Powell's, then 7.5% of your sale will go directly towards the local strike fund. The strike fund, of course, is super important because even though they are not actively on strike right now, it's obviously a really important bargaining tool to have in their pocket. So again, one of the links that I'm including below, the union's own partner link, so that you can shop through Powell's, but using the partner link, you can get some new books and you can support some union workers. So that's a win, win, win. It's so many wins. It's winning all over the place. I can personally vouch for the fact that the experience of ordering online with them and having whatever you purchase shipped to you is a great experience. I don't live in Portland anymore, but in my new location elsewhere in Oregon, I have multiple times bought from them online and just had their purchase shipped to me. And that experience has always been great for me personally, individually. And during the 10 years that I lived in Portland, I also would give gift cards to friends and family in other states. And they always, of course, reported the exact same thing, that like no matter where they are in the country, they're able to make purchases through the Powell's website, use gift cards to shop online with Powell's, and their experience of having whatever they purchase shipped to them is a great experience. Supporting unions, spreading the good news of supporting unions, and getting yourself some cool ass books. Hell yeah.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Let's just start talking about some books. Early March 3rd, we get the surgery, and now we're just sitting and recovering for the next 2 months. I've started using Notion to keep track of several things in my life, including my book reading, because I am but a mere human and I am not immune to the influence of all the awesome vloggers on this site who use Notion and are always talking about how cool it is. As I look at these books, I realize that a lot of it was just about comfort reads, for sure. Either cozy, happy, fun, escape, get me out of here, or like thought-provoking, challenging, wow, cool topic, get my brain distracted type, get me out of here. So, book number 1 of that was Chef's Kiss! Such an adorable fucking book. As I've talked about before, I don't often buy books. I primarily get things from the library, or I just use Kindle Unlimited and I read stuff on my phone so that I can always take a book wherever I'm going, just in my pocket on my phone. And part of that is because I don't have the means, while I'm just a broke millennial living in a small apartment, to have like a big collection of books. That's something that I aspire to have in the future. My forever home one day will have a big wall of books. So as I am getting back into reading here in these last couple years, I'm starting to develop a sort of ongoing personal list of like books that I will want to own one day that I initially read, from some other source. Chef's Kiss is absolutely a book that I will own one day in my forever home. It was so cute. It was so gay. There were recipes in it about like making butternut squash soup. It was like set in the fall and like really, really cozy. There was a funny little pig character. It was a really nice book about finding your passion and like, are you gonna do the practical thing that you're expected to do, or are you gonna follow the passion? I'm sure everybody else who reads gay graphic novels has already heard of that book, but I highly recommend Chef's Kiss. What a wonderful time. When you least expect it, this was kind of a surprising one. Haley Cass is an author who wrote a book that I had previously DNF'd because I was not super intrigued by those characters. Slow burn that I didn't think was being done well. It had a lot of fucking politics. Politics are the things that stress me out in the real world, and so I typically have very little patience for books about characters who are working through political things. So I didn't end up following through on that one. In the Kindle Unlimited app, because I had started that one, it recommended this other Haley Cass to me. And it just sounded like a more interesting premise, so I gave it a chance. And it's not the kind of book that I would typically like. Lesbian lawyer ends up becoming the divorce attorney for a friend, a straight friend who has decided that she needs to divorce her husband. The thing that really intrigued me and made me first pick it up was that lesbian lawyer ends up feeling really strong connection not only with the friend, but with the friend's kid. I was intrigued by the notion of a single parent who ends up finding someone who is just as invested in the kid. I typically stay away from narratives about a queer person developing feelings for a seemingly straight person or a person who thinks that they're straight, but I got the impression from the sample that I read that this might be a story that did a tactful job of someone who just so happened to have always thought that they were straight, just organically ends up developing feelings for someone and, you know, just learns that about themselves. And that's exactly what happened. It was a good read, and it was a slow burn in a satisfying way. It took place over the course of a year, I want to say, and they just end up becoming really good friends, and like, you know, the person is involved in the kid's life. The kid was really, really charming. They had a storyline of the kid being really into like baking shows and Christina Tozzi and MasterChef Junior, and then sure enough, just eventually the person who had always thought that she was straight just ends up sort of realizing, holy shit, I'm really attracted to the friend. And she took it totally in stride, which I really loved. Less, oh no, gay panic, I had no idea about this about myself. She just was a really cool, accepting character who was just like, I didn't question it. I just realized that I was falling for you, so I just went with it. And that was really, really nice. And it was all told from one perspective, which I thought was unique. For those of us who read a lot of romance books, it's very common, of course, for it to be dual perspective. One chapter is called Allison, and then the other chapter is called Samantha, and you know, you go back and forth between the two different characters' perspectives. And this book was entirely from the point of view of lesbian lawyer. And so we got to be in her head the whole time that she was realizing that she was developing these feelings, but, you know, not wanting to be the person who just, you know, pines for a straight friend. But it was interesting and it surprised me. It was the one that I was reading like in the immediate aftermath of having gotten the top surgery, not sleeping at all. I had to be woken up by my friends and family for medication like every 4 hours. I was doing a lot of like, you know, sitting by myself up when everybody else was asleep and just like reading this book, and it was a really good companion for those times. It made me cry. I really liked it. What was after that? I'm so glad that I wrote all of this down. Oh, The Alchemist. My family and I, we traveled for this experience of getting the top surgery, and during part of that time we were staying at a VRBO, vacay house. And you know, you go to those houses and they have sometimes books on the shelf. This was one of the books that was on the shelf. I was always vaguely aware of it just as having been one of those books that is kind of a classic. I never read it in high school, but I have peers who were assigned to read it as part of a high school curriculum or a college curriculum. It actually turned into a really sweet sort of bonding experience where my mom was with me for taking care of me in a lot of the immediate aftermath of the recovery. You know, I just picked this book off the shelf at random and said, hey, what if I start reading this out loud? Would you be interested while you're playing solitaire? I can read this book for us. And she said, yeah. It was really nice to share the experience of this book with someone else. It did get repetitive, but as just like sort of an interesting little moral tale of a boy who goes on an adventure to find some gold and follow his dreams. And it's very repetitive about, you have to follow your dreams. Your most important imperative as a human on this earth is to follow your dreams and trust your gut and follow your dreams. And
by the way, are you following your dreams?
By the time we got like 3/4 of the way through it, my other members of the family kind of lost interest. So I just summarized the ending of it to them, and they were cackling when I told them, like, you won't believe how this person actually ended up learning this moral, and this person actually ended up getting reconnected with this person. It's one of those books that very much has the narrative device of the young boy gets a woman as a reward, the seeking of and putting up on a pedestal of a wife as like the ultimate reward for what you get at the end of your journey was like very heavily laden throughout those pages, and that was part of what was hilarious about how it ended. The reason that it's called The Alchemist is like, you know, the titular character is like kind of jerking the boy's string and like, you know, teaching lessons in sort of a trickster god kind of way. It was interesting. It was a cozy little read. I guess that I'm glad to have been able to add it to my vocabulary of, you know, when people talk about sort of classics and you have that just familiarity with what they're talking about. Sure. It was fine. The banned bookshop of Maggie Banks, a girl who is going through sort of like the mid-20s aimless crisis. What am I doing? How am I comparing my accomplishments to those of my friends who have families and careers? That girl goes to the small town where her best friend lives and works, and she's gonna help cover the shifts at the bookshop while the bestie has a baby and does maternity leave. And very quickly, Maggie ends up learning all about the culture of this weird little small town that is like very devoted to the memory of this fucking dead white guy. Big tourist trap of the town is people coming and worshiping at the shrine of, like, you know, it's a very Mark Twain-esque character, a very F. Scott Fitzgerald, you know, we all go to this town to like see the desk where the guy wrote this one book, kind of historical vibe. It was a book that did a fun job, 50% reader porn, you know, in terms of like the romance of bookshops, and she ends up organizing sort of like underground events for people to like read passages from favorite books, and she sort of falls in love with reading. She sort of like arrives in the town as someone who had never really understood why people can fall into books and what all the hullabaloo is, and then she, the main character, ends up sort of, you know, finding people, finding new friends, finding a romantic partner who all sort of show her the magic of like, oh man, like reading is kind of cool. So it's sort of 50% that sort of thing that you'll just love if you are, you know, someone who is passionate about books and reading and you like to read about bookshops and book loving. And then it was also 50% a black character coming up against the putting up on a shrine of crusty old white guys, and also sort of helping other people face, you know, that guy also was kind of a piece of shit in some ways. They did a good job of depicting a modern community that has to sort of come to terms with the not admirable aspects of a historical figure. It was very much a book that I could get the impression was sort of written in this day and age of, like, you know, places in the South where maybe statues should be taken down and erected about someone else. Maybe power should be taken out of the hands of the crusty old white guys who've always had the power and given to the people who deserve some reparations, or some amendments made in the town's history about how things actually went down. It was the kind of book that can present a very idyllic, Disney-fied version of how conflicts like that can be worked out in a respectful way, in a small community, everyone sees where everyone's points of view is coming from kind of way. And it also was just like in the context of bookshops. And so it was a fun, sweet little read. I enjoyed it. Oh my god, these fucking graphic novels. So at my local library, they have a really cool graphic novel section. Sitting right next to each other were 3 volumes in this graphic novel series by this Dr. Steve Haynes. Wrote these books, and they were illustrated by Sophie Standing. The 3 books that I got were Pain is Really Strange, Trauma is Really Strange, and Touch is Really Strange. I thought that it would be cool to have that on hand during my top surgery recovery as sort of like an experience to read about what my body was going through, be able to distance myself from perhaps pain I would be experiencing by sort of getting intellectual about it. I thought that it was an interesting approach to, you know, have maybe little factoids and pieces of information relayed in the form of a graphic novel. The first 2 books were exactly that. I took a lot of pictures while I was reading the Pain book and the Trauma book. There were some little factoids in there that stuck with me that I will carry forward and like maybe refer back to in the future during moments of pain or, you know, working through experiences. The 3rd book had a real tone shift. Like, the Pain book and the Trauma book were both full of information, like actual stats and actual factoids that then seemed to inspire what the sort of narrative was depicting and what the illustrations were about. Then the book about touch was a tonal shift into vague, was a tonal shift into abstraction. I sort of read them in chronological order. I realized after the fact that like the earlier books in the series were the ones about pain and about trauma. Then, the one that was about touch was published after the pandemic had begun. Seemed to do a lot of moralizing about how important touch is and how tragic it is that now we're in this day and age where you're not just allowed to touch people. It also had some kind of fishy things to say about how now these days there are some parties that think that touch is such a problematic thing, like it was a real whiplash to see the word problematic used in this book. So I didn't enjoy that book as much, and it sort of colored the opinions that I had looking back on having read the first two. And sure enough, when I went on Goodreads, I was real surprised to find out about some of the other publications by that author. Guess I can't go so far as to say, like, entirely fuck that author and, like, don't bother to ever read anything that this person has published. But if you ever do get interested enough in reading, you know, just take it with a grain of salt. Consider the source, consider the context. And certainly I'm bummed that the awesome illustrations have to be kind of tainted, because the illustrations were fabulous. And I ended up looking a little bit more into other things that Sophie Standing has done. One of them is an interesting looking book that I just so happened not to have read. The other one is the autism book that I have heard other people talking about, and that seems, you know, small and like not certainly like fully definitive because it's a thin book, but interesting and like, you know, very good illustrations. So it's an interesting journey for an illustrator to have been associated so much with these books, and I certainly wish better for her. And that author, I do kind of think, can go fuck himself. Ooh, another much better graphic novel that I read that was one of the last things that I read in March. One of the Grant Snyder books, I Will Judge You by Your Bookshelf. This is absolutely one of the titles that made it onto my books that I want to own in my forever home one day collection, for sure. I took so many pictures. It was so the type of book that is an ode to the bookish person, the type of person who is familiar with tropes and introvert culture and reading challenge culture. It was so comforting and so familiar. I have been following this author on Tumblr for ages. We all have those authors or those creators that we see little vignettes from online sometimes, and that you always have a little bit of curiosity in your head that makes you say like, oh yeah, it would be really cool to like see what a whole collection by that person would be like. If this hadn't just happened to have been on the shelf at my library, then I don't know that I ever would have taken the plunge, and I'm really, really glad that I did. This was such a rewarding experience. I fucking love this book. Oh, and then the last thing that I read in March was Legends and Lattes. I won't say a ton about it because there's already been so much said, and I will be talking about it more in the future. This was another one of the ones that I read as part of reading so-and-so's favorite books videos, but it was as wonderful as everybody says it is. So that was all that I read in March, right? So how many is that in March? 7, 8, 9. And of course, several of those are just like small, thin graphic novels and like, you know, quick reads. That's 9 books in March and only 4 in April. And when I look at it, I understand that like some of these ones that I read in April were a little bit more of a slog. First up was Meeting Millie. And I picked it up initially because it's called like an Oxford romance. I guess that it's the first in a series. There are more or will be more or something. This was a book that was charming, cozy in some parts, like autumn vibes at Oxford, and the girls who initially had a thing in college are now back as adults and like reconnecting their friendship and maybe more. I ultimately ended up not being thrilled with this one because, oh, and I guess I should also, hey, editing Chloe, go ahead and say spoiler alert for in case there's anybody in this audience who randomly might be interested in reading this book. It had, again, the trope of one of the characters is lesbian and one of the characters thinks she is straight, or like, you know, everybody else thinks that she is straight, and so they have always just been friends. The book did not handle well the storyline that I had been worried about with the other book that I read and preferred, right? In the other book, the other person just realized that, oh yeah, I just have these feelings, and like I hadn't ever thought about it before, but now that it's here, I'm glad that it is, and let's go. She was open to it, she was non-critical about it, and she didn't have the feelings because of past trauma. The storyline here, it is explicitly stated that part of what the character who is awakening to her queerness is doing is getting away from past trauma involving men and sex with men. and that was disappointing. For me, it was too much. For me, I do not need any hint of any certainly explicit statement of here is a character who always thought that she was straight, but now that she has been traumatized by men, she is realizing that she's actually open to women and glad that she'll never have to sleep with another man again. I wasn't into that. And then into another kind of challenging, really honestly all the books that I read in April were a little challenging for me. All About Love. This is my first bell hooks, definitely an author that I have been interested in getting into for a long, long time. Maybe I'll have a better experience in the future learning more about by looking at like videos and audio of this person speaking. The small clips that I've seen before and that I've seen other people reference in videos. This is obviously a very influential thinker, writer, speaker. I think that maybe listening to the speakings of this person will be a more impactful way for the messages to get through to me. I had, I think, just been a little spoiled by the fact that the last couple nonfictions that I read were so accessible. I am one of those people who has had a hard time historically with approaching nonfiction and not just feeling like it's homework, not just feeling like I have to slog through it like it's a book report. Reading Sweetgrass and Rest is Resistance back to back were just very accessible, approachable, didn't feel like homework, were very anecdotal, included like a fair amount of factual information and like, you know, historical information and analytical information, but in a way that didn't feel academic. You know, it felt very organically woven into both of those books. All About Love was just a little dry for me. Especially with the subject matter. I think that I had been expecting it to be more an approach based on memoir or personal reflection. I think that I had been expecting more that it would be an approach based on social information. It was very bibliography vibe. It had a lot of citations from other works and then reflecting on and responding to in sort of a critical way the thinkings of other writers, more like a analysis on how other authors and thinkers have reflected on the notion of love than an individual person working through, you know, a personal experience. And that's not a bad thing. It was a lot of dense language for me that just was like not super easy to plug into, but the ideas therein were striking and were moving. And there were absolutely some moments that hit me as, man, if more people in our society could operate from a place based in this theory of love and affection and how we should all treat each other as humans, then the world would be a much better place. As a text to sit and try to read from beginning to end and get a narrative out of, not a narrative in terms of fiction, but a narrative in terms of a flow, feeling like there's a beginning and a middle and an end and a place that we're going. It didn't have that type of pull to it. It didn't have that type of feeling like, oh, you open it and it pulls you in and you want to keep reading because it's going somewhere. It had much more of a feeling of, in this chapter, I shall thesis statement. In this chapter, I shall thesis statement. So for people who have more of an intellectual mind, then it would probably be a very satisfying read. For me, it was a little bit challenging and a little bit dry, but I'm really, really glad that I gave it a try. And I certainly am captivated by bell hooks as a persona and as an influence and as a very important part of like queer history and like political writing and awareness of really important topics. I'm excited to learn more about bell hooks. This book may have not been the best entry point for me, but I'm really, really glad that I tried it. And then the final two books that I read, if I hold myself accountable to my editing and upload schedule, will be books that I talk about in my next video, so I won't say a ton right now. But I read Book Lovers and Love on the Brain. And
what the fuck is going on in here on this day?
these books were challenges for me. stay tuned for my forthcoming video about the ways in which these books challenged me. But again, isn't it great to journey outside of our comfort zone? Isn't it great to isn't it great to step outside of one's typical reading pattern to see what the other side of the pond is doing? If I typically just read a lot of queer rom-com romances as my comfort food, isn't it nice? Isn't it important? Isn't it good to know what the straight people are reading? It was a challenge for me. I'll talk more about that next week. So altogether, I think that's 17. What is that? 2 books in January, 2 books in February, March, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 4 books in April. That's 17 altogether. So far read this year. The books that I read in my top surgery recovery, technically the surgery was in March, so I've been recovering from that for March and April, and that's subtracting the January and February reads. 13 books during the top surgery recovery, and 17 books for the year so far. Leave me some comments below. How is your reading year going? Have you found yourself in any kind of a slump? Are there any books that you have tried reading and found yourself saying, you know, that's a little bit of a challenge for me? Oh man, I'm getting exhausted right now. Where like I sat down at the start of this video with a very, it's okay, just like sit and like bring the low level of energy that you have to this video and just go with it. And then of course I start talking about the books and I get very excited and very into it and very animated, and now I'm passing out. But yeah, leave me some comments below. What are some upcoming maybe like reading goals or events that you're excited about? I'm really excited about trying to jump on some different readathons. I've had one attempt at a readathon so far and it was a disaster. So I'm excited moving forward for like a couple of readathons that will be like some maybe smaller goals, less ambitious goals, but goals that I can actually accomplish, and won't that be fun? I'm excited to be able to talk about books with you in the comments below. One last quick reminder to check out the link below for information about supporting the workers at Powell's Books. Get yourself something nice, use their partner link so that the money that you spend helps contribute to the strike fund. If you enjoy mediocre pictures on Instagram or the cool misadventures of a cool 37-year-old cool kid on TikTok, I turned 37 in April, how exciting. Or if you enjoy gay memes and rambles on Tumblr, you are cordially invited to come hang out with me on social media. I am at ChloeThePayne on all the things. Shout out to my patrons, Hiker Steve and Cherry That Tomato. I have some very cool changes upcoming for the Patreon that I'm super excited about. So if you are interested in checking out the Patreon as well, or information about my website or my commissioned songwriting services, any of that good stuff, I'll have all of those details in the description box below for you. I hope you'll consider liking this video if you liked it and subscribing if you would like to stick around. I upload new videos on this channel every Wednesday/Thursday. And I think that's it for today. My guys, my pals, my live long and prospers. I've been watching Star Trek lately. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you. This has been a lovely chill time. And until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Now it's time for an end card. Look at the links. I just cut my hair yesterday. It feels so good to not have the hair on the sides of my head anymore. Hello. Let's go take a nap. Let's go take a nap. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go take a nap. Hey, let's go take a nap. Click on the links. Bye.